Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
We're hoping that the federal government will reassess the situation and open more points of entry.
Without that kind of information and data being shared, we also can't understand how those barriers are being perpetuated, how they're continuing, how we can make abortion more accessible.
We've been working to understand how we can better improve equitable access to services. So, our hope is that through this central point of access, we'll make it easier for folks.
Thanks for joining us. We begin on the water, where cross-border boaters say things are getting complicated. Vessels have to report to border agents at selected ports when returning from America. But this year, there are far fewer places where people can check in. CBC's Ashta Shetty has more.
Maybe stuck out in the storm because I can't get into safe harbor. And that's just not good for anybody.
With looser border restrictions and great weather like today, local boaters were excited to be able to cross over to America once again. But things are a lot more complicated now. Boaters I spoke to said they didn't even have a heads up. There's now only 2 small vessel reporting sites locally, one here in Lakeview Marina, the other one over on Pelee Island.
Somebody from Amherstburg goes directly across to a harbor in the States. Let's say they go to Albemarle Boat Club. Normally they would come straight back over to Amherstburg, call in, get cleared. They have to travel 41 kilometers up the river to Lakeview Park Marina and then 41 kilometers back down the river because they have to come to Lakeview Park Marina to call in.
Gatfield says a process for boaters returning to Canada was so much simpler before the pandemic. All they had to do was make a call to customs to declare items on their vessel. Now, boaters have to physically make that long journey to one of only 2 CBSA reporting sites in Windsor, Essex. Before, there were 33.
It's an additional hour of drive time from Bell River into Windsor and back, just to be able to report that I'm back into Canada. Where before we used to be able to go to, I could go to Bell River, I could go to Puce Harbor, I could go to Windsor, I could go almost anywhere, quite frankly, and I could call in.
Gatfield says those who are forced to stay on the water longer will be more vulnerable to things going south. They'll have to worry about more than just potentially unpredictable, dangerous weather.
Personal illness, seasickness, the sun is a factor. Sun and movement of the water can greatly affect folks.
These risks are making some boaters feel very uncertain. Some are just choosing to cross over to the States less often.
If this doesn't change, I'm going to have, and I continue with 20 trips, I'm going to basically travel another 1,600 kilometers and burn about 4,000 liters in fuel to do that extra. And at the current fuel prices, so another $8,000.
The CBSA says a reduction in reporting sites for boats is temporary. They plan to gradually restore services, but there's no indication on how soon that might happen. Ashta Shetty, CBC News, Windsor.
The possibility that the U.S. Supreme Court may overturn Roe v. Wade has sparked conversations on this side of the border. If that happens, abortion would be outlawed in some states, including Michigan. Here in Windsor, although it's legal, we're learning more about some of the barriers that still exist and how the lack of openness to talk about it may actually be harmful. Joining us live in studio now with more on all of this is the CBC's Jason Vio. Jason, how will what's happening in the U.S. affect people here?
Well, one researcher I spoke with says abortion bans don't actually stop abortions. So it's possible that women could cross state lines where it's allowed or come to Windsor for that procedure. Windsor Regional Hospital wouldn't say, though, how that process would work if they came here. They do say we aren't commenting on the issue at this time, most importantly for privacy and security of patients and our clinical staff. For women seeking this procedure, it is a private matter that we can arrange with them privately or with the assistance of a family doctor referral. I also asked for any abortion-related data from hospitals in Windsor, Chatham, and Sarnia, and they all declined to share that information.
Jason, how might the lack of openness around this issue affect women?
Well, there's value in making abortion-related data public because that may identify barriers that exist and give you a sense about how accessible abortion is in our region. Now, that's according to Jacqueline Potvin. She's a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Guelph and one of the few people who agreed to speak with me on this topic. Her research looks into reproductive rights and justice globally, including how society talks about abortion. And she says she's disappointed some healthcare organizations don't even want to have that conversation.
Also means that if someone finds themselves in a position where they want to seek an abortion, they may not even know where to start. That kind of understanding of how to navigate the healthcare system in order to get an abortion, a lot of women feel like they're starting completely blind. So again, that can be why they turn to things like crisis pregnancy centers, because they're not aware. And of course, that does make it less accessible, because the harder it is to know what the first step is, that's going to put you behind in terms of time. So that's why I think that kind of silence that comes not only from stigma, but also this complacency can be really dangerous, because we don't have an awareness of what we should be doing to seek abortion. People don't necessarily know what to do to support others who are looking for an abortion. And then again, that stigma and that silence that allows stereotypes and taboos to continue.
Now, the data we were seeking from hospitals included how many abortions they were performing each year, how many physicians perform those abortions, and if there were any sort of wait lists associated with that procedure. And again, all three of those hospitals in our region declined to provide any of that information. Katerina.
So, Jason, what resources are available for women in our community who do have questions about abortions?
Well, there are resources in our community, certainly, but some of the groups offering them didn't want to speak publicly. I did speak with the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit, and they do offer counseling services through a public health nurse for women with questions about abortion, the process and the risks and those types of things. From there, they refer them to other community organizations such as Windsor Regional Hospital. But the health unit did say if there's an opportunity for more open dialogue about abortion, they would support that.
So would women who may come from the U.S. for an abortion have access to these same services?
Well, that's one area that still kind of remains unclear. And if the woman from the U.S. is uninsured, Windsor Regional wouldn't say how much an abortion would cost here. I did hear back, though, from the Ministry of Health on this, and they say that some hospitals work out payment plans so that bills can be paid over time, and some hospitals will absorb a portion of the costs, enabling the patient to contribute what they can. The province says hospitals are considered independent corporations, so they independently handle billing for uninsured individuals, which could include people from the U.S.
Thanks for this, Jason. CBC's Jason Villa live in studio for us tonight. And the CBC's Katie Nicholson went to Michigan to learn more about what it actually would take to cross the border to Canada for an abortion.
So what's it like for you to think that abortion could become illegal here, but just across the way there, people still would be able to access it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as nonsensical as this entire conversation, that you can be this close to access, but in reality, it's, could be a lifetime away for some people. I suggested that we talk here because, this is a monument to the Underground Railroad and the role that Detroit played in getting people to freedom. And we're talking about that now. Providers are talking about how do we make this short distance and a pathway to access and freedom possible for people. Yeah, so we actually really should see who is going up there.
There is a large network trying to build that pathway.
This is only the most recent attack on reproductive freedoms.
Danielle Atkinson is among them. She founded Mothering Justice, which fights for the needs of mothers of color. So Danielle, what happens if Roe versus Wade falls in Michigan?
We have a state that has a high poverty level, and that's obviously Black and brown populations, but it's also rural white populations. It's about, do I have a car with gas or a passport? Can I get over there? And can I get back? And what does that mean? Can I leave my job? Do I have paid leave? This is a system of privilege and resources that we have to take into consideration. We have to think about the people who are living on the margins of our society and what does it mean to physically get across a river.
This is the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I'm here to meet up with a student who connects people seeking abortions with those services and also helps provide peer support for those people. She also hopes to someday become an abortion provider herself.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How feasible is that for people seeking an abortion to come across the border?
My first thought goes to passports. A lot of pregnancies are unplanned, right? So it's not like you're checking your passport date to make sure that it's up to date and that you'll be able to even go to Canada right away.
The truth of the matter is, people have been crossing this border for decades to access abortion services. Back in the 80s, it was Canadians in particular who were coming over to the U.S. side.
The trip from Metro takes about 2 hours. That's why they come here, because they can get appointments immediately or sooner than they can in Ontario. There are 5 licensed outpatient abortion clinics in this border city.
What do you think of that?
Well, it brings us back a lot. Over those years, thousands of Canadians went to the United States and were incredibly graciously received.
So that's the past, and now this has happened.
Correct.
What do you see as your role?
I think that if indeed the situation got as dire as it might, there would certainly be physicians who would be willing, if the need was there, to set up some type of clinical facility in the Windsor area so that people didn't have to come all the way to Toronto. And I think it'll just really mobilize people in this country to do everything they can if we're called upon to return the favor, if I may put it that way.
Back in Detroit, where a face etched in bronze looks across the river to freedom, Danielle Atkinson is happy to have the favor returned as she scrambles for answers on her side of the border.
What this means for Black and brown people, and what does access look like? What does the ability to get people to services look like? It's been crazy.
And likely will continue to be for weeks, maybe years to come.
That's the CBC's Katie Nicholson in Detroit. Windsor Essex is losing out on a multi-billion-dollar deal. It's no longer being considered for a new LG Chem power plant. At issue, the electricity grid. The CEO of Invest Windsor Essex says the region will not have the electricity supply needed to run the plant by 2024, which is when it's scheduled to be up and running. He says more is needed to be able to build the infrastructure fast enough to stay on LG Chem's list of consideration.
We are eliminated from consideration for an over $2 billion investment with potential of 1,000 to 1,500 jobs. Because of that is not where you want to be. And we need action. We need the capacity built out. That will take political will. That will take prioritization by the IESO, Hydro One, and then in consultation with our local energy suppliers like Essex Power and NWIN.
McKenzie says the concerns with electricity supply will not affect the new EV battery plant, which is a dual venture between LG Energy Solution and Stellantis. Hotel du Grace is working to make it easier for children and youth to get mental health and addiction support. They've recently launched We Connect Kids, described as a central point of access. You reach out, and the Regional Children's Center team connects you to the right service based on your specific needs. This as demand for services for children is on the rise.
We don't want families to have to call a million different numbers or, to call someplace only to find out it's not the right place. So by centralizing the intake, we'll take away that the difficulty in getting to the right place. And through a broad community needs assessment that we did a couple of years ago, we got a lot of feedback that families don't really know where to start. And even primary care physicians often don't know where to send folks. And so we understood there was a need to create more of a centralized hub to help individuals who don't know where to go get started in the process.
So without We Connect Kids, what would the process be like for a family that for the first time is dealing with mental health challenges with a child in the family?
Well, one of the things that we heard through the needs assessment and some of the work that we did through the planning process was that folks felt they didn't know where to start, and oftentimes they would get maybe just a phone number. If they showed up at the wrong spot and needed to go elsewhere, they were given a phone number and had to call somewhere else. And then they had to tell their story all over again. And we hear that a lot, that people don't want to have to go through the pain and the stress of telling their story over and over again. So we're hoping through streamlining and working together and creating a more connected child and youth mental health service, that folks don't have to continue to retell their story, that they get connected to the right services at the right time with the right service provider.
And for more information, you can call 519-257-KIDS or visit Hotel Dieu's website. Voters could make history this provincial election. No Windsor-Essex riding has ever elected a Black or South Asian woman as a member of provincial parliament. But that could change on June 2nd. For the first time, a woman of color is running in all 3 ridings. Here's what they had to say.
The biggest barrier is this: since I am not born here, because other candidates would go and have discussion, they would straight talk about their platform. But for me, I have to talk first, when I introduce myself, some people ask me, oh, so where are you, what religion are you, where were you born, things like that. So if I get the 2 minutes at the door, 1 minute would be gone to introducing myself about who I am and where I have come from, what is my background, what is my education, things like that. Versus other candidates, okay, they were born, brought up here, they were always lived their life here. I moved in 1996 here. Right. So it's a little bit challenging for me. The time I could spend on talking about the platform, half of the time goes to people just to learn about me.
We have a long history in our community of people that are descendants from some of the people that were fleeing enslavement in the United States that have been here for 160 something, if not longer, years. So being able, and as a first generation Canadian myself, right, being able to hold that space in history would be a deep honor and something that's not lost on me in any way, shape, or form. It's incredibly important. Representation matters. Making sure that we, are electing people and also governments and putting in place policies that affect all people are incredibly important to Ontarians.
I mean, I'm a Black female. We need diversity in the government. If you look at the cabinet that's currently seated, you won't find very much diversity at all. In order to have adequate representation for all of the individuals in any given area, it has to be representative of the people who actually live there. And that's one of the reasons I'm running as well, because there's a different perspective that comes from the people of the Black community, and I carry that perspective. As well, I've grown up in this riding. This has been my home. My family has been in this area since the 1800s.
And if you want to learn more about who is running in your riding, just head to our website. We've got a survey there to hear about what issues matter the most to you. And we also brought back CBC's Vote Compass. It can give you a sense of how your individual political views and values line up with the political parties. And learn more about the parties and their positions on a wide variety of issues. All of this you can find at cbc.ca/Windsor. Live look outside there. We had another beautiful day today. Lots of sun and some clouds, and more temperatures in the 20s are coming up in the days ahead. Colette will be here after the break with more. Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at our weather forecast. Colette, I was lucky enough to spend a good chunk of my day outside today, and it just feels like summer this week.
Yeah, and it feels like summer already, and it's now going to start getting to that area where, okay, it's summer, and that's the stuff that people kind of start complaining about, kind of part of summer. The heat goes up, the temperatures go up, but actually we've got a little bit of time before that humidity starts going up as well. I did want to show you this graphic again today because I wanted to show you, look at Chicago now, into the low 30s, and you can see how those colors, that brighter orange, starting to spread across Michigan State towards southwestern Ontario. So yes, the numbers going up for us, but also pointing out again today, Moosonee and Kapuskasing, almost 30 degrees there today, and the hot spots tied for the hot spots in Canada. So there are the current temperatures, and you do notice that 5-degree difference between Windsor and Chatham-Kent, or if you didn't notice it, I'm drawing your attention to it, and that's that breeze. The closer you are to that lakeshore, that you really feel it, even just a little bit inland when you're talking about a south or southeasterly breeze, it has that impact. So we are seeing slightly cooler, and it is going to be a little bit breezy at times still into tomorrow morning, and then we should find those winds backing off somewhat. What you don't see here, or very hard to distinguish, just a few very light fair weather clouds. And in fact, much of this, often when we say fair weather, we're really kind of thinking cumulus. A lot of this is just high, thin cirrus cloud that we're talking about. The active weather to the north, it's having to drive itself around this ridge of high pressure that's sitting over top of us. And then you see as it pushes then further east, how it really dries up, like a little sprinkle, probably not going to reach the ground. Just a bit of extra cloud cover coming as that moves through, and then high pressure carries on, and again, kind of bumps that next system so that it has to stay to the north. We stay dry, and during the daylight hours with that sunshine in there, enhancing that temperature for tomorrow, 27 degrees, Thursday, 28. Now we start to get into that territory where people start kind of complaining because the temperature up there, humidity building. As that humidity does build, that's why there in the second half of the weekend I have put some thunderstorm activity in there. Katarina will start to see that risk because that air becomes more buoyant, a little bit of a trigger, and there you go, you get some scattered showers or thunderstorms.
So in other words, we really have to soak up this week as much as we possibly can.
Yes, I want to say I don't want to hear anyone complaining, but I know we'll hear people complaining.
It always happens. When it's cold, we complain it's too cold. When it's hot, we complain it's too hot. We're never happy.
Nature of the weather business.
Exactly. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, division over local bike lanes. We'll tell you about that right after the break.
home.
The City of Windsor is moving forward with its plans to revitalize two major streets, University Avenue and Victoria Avenue. The changes include the loss of about 84 parking spots on University to make room for greenery and bike lanes. Some business owners support this.
Losing 84 parking spaces along this corridor is worth the trade-off of more cyclists and pedestrians using badly needed cycling infrastructure. Not only do I own this downtown business, I also work downtown and have always been able to find a parking space in nearby garages. I rode my bike to work today, and this type of infrastructure would help me feel safer as a cyclist.
But not all businesses are for the change. The owner of Booster Juice on University near Olette says if his customers have no place to park, his business would take a big hit. So if the parking spots were removed, he'd likely relocate. When the new crew of USS Enterprise boldly goes wherever their next space adventure takes them, they'll be doing it in style. These are boots designed by Vancouver shoemaker John Fluvog for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. The cast can be seen sporting them in the new TV series, which premiered last week. The shoes are already popular among A-listers like Beyonce and Lady Gaga. Still, having your footwear deemed space travel worthy is no small feat. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. You can find all of our election coverage there. Thanks so much for watching and have a great night.